So, do you guys find yourselves asking questions like this? Well, to be fair to this guy, he has a bit of a point, because take a look at this. Anyways, welcome. My name is Silk. I fly things, roleplay as a Combine Harvester, and briefly held the Battlefield 6 jet world record. I will be your flight instructor and farming consultant today, because in this video I will speedrun through everything you need to light up the skies in Battlefield 6. So when you spawn on a jet in Battlefield, you can make it pitch, roll, and yaw. Pitch is pulling up or down, rolling, as the name would suggest, is rolling left and right, and yaw rudders the jet laterally. You'll find that you can aim using combinations of these inputs, but there are inefficient ways of aiming and efficient ways of aiming. In previous Battlefield games, the jet rudders were very strong, and therefore you could rely on yaw heavily when you were aiming. In Battlefield 6 though, I did improve the feeling just slightly with some settings, which I will get into later, but the rudders are still unbelievably weak. This really changes the way that we aim in this game. Now in Battlefield 6, for large movements, you want to aim primarily with roll and pitch, leaving only fine micro adjustments to the yaw. Especially when following enemy aircraft, you want to roll such that your jet is perpendicular to their direction of motion, allowing for a smooth shot using pitch. This is easier than ever in Battlefield 6 with the new PIP crosshair, which stands for Predicted Impact Point. You simply align this little circle with the enemy aircraft and click. I recommend watching the enemy jet though rather than the point, and only really using it as a reference. It feels more effective to watch and react to the enemy jet, rather than watching and reacting to the PIP, which is just reacting to the jet. It's just an extra step of latency. Now, it's all well and good to have consistent aim, but a lot of jetting comes down to where you fly and when you're allowed to do it. If you don't keep these things in mind, you might last just as long as a passenger aircraft in Russian airspace.
I love Pakistan! I will sacrifice my life for Pakistan! I love Pakistan!
Generally, just because you can fly anywhere you want, definitely does not mean that you should. And as a general rule, I tend to draw a line at the halfway point of the map. Your side is usually pretty safe, and their side needs a little bit more judgment. If enemy jets are up, you must kill them to unlock their side of the map. And if there are enemy AA vehicles, you should also create a mental zone around that vehicle, which must be approached with caution. For me, the big thing is to never get slow, committed, or vulnerable on their side of the map, especially when jets and AA are up. I like to fly very aggressively, and because of this, I might do a strafe or two while their jets are dead, just on their side of the map, but a great practice is to play more of a defensive style where you punish the enemy players who overstep. Another key tip about where you fly is stinger range. In previous Battlefield games, it was more of a radius from the stinger player, of a certain length. See, in Battlefield 6, stingers have infinite vertical range, so when you're running away, you cannot run vertically, you must run horizontally away from that target. Anyways, getting into something that everyone always asks me about, it's dogfighting. Dogfighting in Battlefield is a rite of passage if you want to keep the jet alive. This video could be twice as long and all about dogfighting, but I will give you guys the essentials here. Firstly, jets have an optimal turning speed. I roughly determined it by looping at different speeds and timing the frames required for one full loop. There's a couple potential points of error here. A, I'm not a robot, I couldn't keep it exactly on the target value. And B, I cannot ensure that I kept the jet perfectly horizontal this entire time, which would be required for the most accurate results. Anyways,
Look at this graph!
you can see the golden number is around 340. Well, the golden number is 340 in a classical sense. See, I may have stumbled across some new tech here. Let me introduce you to vector tapping, or as I'm going to call it, V-tapping. So that's the only V-tapping you're doing. The thrust vectoring in Battlefield 6 will always right the jet back to its original position on the pitch axis. Well, it will if you vector for long enough. This is where V-tapping comes in. If you thrust vector in very short bursts, the game doesn't seem to recognize it, allowing you to keep the extra tight turn radius without ever getting self-righted. Obviously this tech only applies to the stealth jets, and I am no V-tapping expert just yet. But it does seem like you can be pretty spammy with these, especially when gravity is working with you. Now there is actually a little bit more speed tech, this time given to me by a player called Heave. He noticed that the jet turns faster when braking, especially from a high speed. At a steady state without V-tapping, it seems like 340 is the optimal turn speed, but where possible, start your dogfights at max speed and then brake down to 340 as you start turning. Then if you're in a stealth jet, you should be V-tapping, but remember, it's going to be a lot harder to aim while doing this. So It's a bit of a trade-off. You can get a pretty good turn rate if you just hold 340. It's easier to aim that way. Or if you really want to pull around on the enemy jet, V-tapping seems to be the play. I think it will also have a very, very strong utility in defense, doing scissors downwards, as you can really, really spam the hell out of it. Anyways, where to turn is definitely the hard part, and in Battlefield 6, without a radar, which is what the game is like right now, I'm having to rely a lot on sound and judging the enemy's direction as we merge. If I'm absolutely lost with no sound cue or no kind of information at the merge, I will actually press down my Alt key, which is free look, and flick back towards the enemy jet and check where they go. It's better to go in the right direction a little bit slower, I think, rather than go in the wrong direction as fast as possible. What my friend always tells me, and I think this is great advice, is to try and crash into the enemy jet without crashing into them. You want to pick the shortest path to where the enemy jet will be at the time of the next merge. Anyways, this part of the video is extremely hard to make without a radar, and I will 100% revisit it with a full dogfighting video once DICE fixes this horrific radar. Now, when it comes to farming, target priority is essential, not only to stay alive, but also to juggle tasks successfully. My target priority is simply jets first, then helis, and then after that, it becomes a little bit blurry. A lot of players have a definitive A to Z target priority, but I think if you want to farm as hard as possible and be as effective as you can in the jet, it's a little bit trickier than that. So often AA would come next, but if the enemy AA is useless, then why not leave them alone? Then you might say tanks after that, but for me it's more of a, if there is a bunch of infantry or anything that can die in one pass, guaranteed, do that, and then work on tanks. It also comes down to the enemy jet timing. That's a major factor there. If it's 30 seconds until the enemy jet spawns, don't start working on a tank that will take you 45 seconds to kill. By the time you have to go fight the enemy jet, he'll have repaired his entire health bar, and that's completely useless. It's also worth noting that jets take 90 seconds to spawn. Try and get used to timing that in your head. Trust me, it seems like it's a lot to track, but once you get used to it, it really just becomes second nature. And AA also usually takes 60 seconds in other Battlefield games. I'm pretty sure that's the case in Battlefield 6. That's another good one to know. Now, getting into the more niche stuff, I see my teammates as resources, especially teammates in jets, helicopters, anti-aircraft, and armor. If you let your friendly jet die, you're likely to have lost a resource and you open yourself up to a 2v1. If you keep your tanks alive, you're more likely to gain a passive buff if one of those guys are cleaning up enemy anti-air and infantry. If I see my friendly tank flanking an AA, he is a critical resource and I will keep him alive as best as I can. Even if it's just killing an engineer who's looking at him, I think this framework of thinking is just great. Another niche thing, but something that is totally essential if you want to break into that upper echelon of farming, is flow. What I mean by flow is how you tie sequences of strafes together. How much wasted time is there between strafes? How direct is your path from target to target? How do you time your countermeasure usage to maximize your time hammering the battlefield? This is something that is really hard to train, but some key things I focus on here are giving myself the minimum strafe length required for each target. I want to keep track of at least one target as well in advance of whatever I'm shooting at. That second one really helps me to fly without hesitation. I'm not thinking about my next target. I already know sometimes 2, 3, 4 targets ahead, and that helps you chain together strafes and know exactly where to fly. Now, to wrap things up, jet controls. I will show you guys the essentials and what I'm running here right now. These are my binds, and these are the control options. My DPI is 1600. Feel free to try the setup. With all that said, that is my quick start jet guide. Once things are more figured out, be ready for an ultimate jet guide as well, an ultimate heli guide, and maybe some other stuff as well. Be sure to subscribe for more Battlefield 6 coverage, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.